All right. Good morning, everybody, for our webinar today. Thank you for being patient. We wanted to give you the best demo possible, so we're just figuring out a few technical complications. Apologies for the slight delay, but we're all ready and set to go. The topic for today is gesture-controlled interactions with platform events and the IoT Explorer. Right, and I'm Shashank Srivatswaya. I'll be your host for today. I'm a developer relations manager at Salesforce. And we are joined today by Raghavendra Yarlagadda, who is the speaker for today and is going to take you through this topic for today about gesture control interactions. Raghavendra is a demo engineer from our Q branch team in India from Salesforce. Demo engineering guys make these amazing demos, and we thought, why not share it with the community, right? And we came up with a very interesting use case. Hopefully, you will enjoy it. With that, let's start off. And before I say anything, like any Salesforce presentation, let me tell you that we might make some forward-looking statements about features which are not yet generally available. So if you're making any buying decisions, please make them only based on your research. And we're always up for social. You can reach out to us on our various social channels. Tweet us at Salesforce Devs. And also, you can also follow us on our Facebook page on Salesforce Developers and LinkedIn. And you can also find other awesome webinar content and other videos on our Salesforce Developers YouTube channel. And this webinar is being recorded. So any of you who might have a question about, is there going to be a recording? Will it be posted somewhere? Yes, there will. This is the same registration page that you used. It's going to transform into an on-demand page where you can get the recording and the slides a couple of days or 3-4 days after the webinar, right? And with that, let me just cover a few more housekeeping items. Everybody has been muted, and if you have any questions, feel free to use the questions window in GoToWebinar to post your questions while the webinar is happening or towards the end as well. What we'll do is we will do a live Q&A session at the end where we will look at all these questions and we will answer as many questions as possible. Right, and stick for the Q&A at the end. And if you have any questions that you could not get answered, you can always go to our developer forums to post your questions. All right, coming to the agenda for today, we're going to talk about what are gestures and what are platform events and what is the IoT Explorer, to give you an understanding, to set you up for the demo. And we have this amazing demo where we're using gesture interactions, IoT devices, the Salesforce platform events, IoT Explorer, and even Lightning components to basically build this interactive use case that we're going to see. And we're going to follow it up with the amazing demo that we have in store for you today. And as a developer, you would also be curious about how it works. So we're going to talk about that as well. And without further ado, let me hand over to Raghavendra, who is going to take you through the journey for today. Over to you, Raghavendra.
All right. Thank you, Shashank. Thank you very much for the introduction and putting out a few points. So let's get started. What are gestures? So the definition is very simple. They're a form of a non-verbal communication or non-verbal communication. But they, in the 21st century, with all the technologies evolving, gestures are also being used as the main source of user input. And a few of the most common gestures are a touch, a tap, a double tap, and swipe left, right, up, and down. So that is all about what gestures are.
Okay, so that's good. Instead of just probably calling up tech support, I can just do a little gesture on my device, on maybe my refrigerator or air conditioner or something like that, right?
Yeah. So
and in the world of smartphones,
yes,
our interaction is through touch.
Yeah.
And now you're saying I don't even have to touch; I can just do a swipe.
Yeah, in the fourth industrial revolution, the 2D touch is transforming into 3D touch. It's basically like you can wave in the air and get stuff done with your electronics and gadgets with the connected systems.
That's fantastic. Okay, so we have this IoT device where the gesture is basically your input. So where does Salesforce come into picture? What does Salesforce offer for this integration with IoT devices?
So the answer is platform events. So platform events are the Salesforce enterprise messaging platform that facilitate the delivery of custom notifications within Salesforce and from external sources. And you can use platform events not only to monitor your systems, connected systems and devices, but also to communicate changes to other systems like Salesforce. And this event-based messaging generally revolves around the publisher and subscribe model, which is unlike the request and response model. So it really decouples the connected devices and hence makes the communication between them very easy.
Yeah.
And platform events are similarly set up like custom objects. So we'll come into the differences as we move on in the webinar.
So you're saying that if I'm comfortable with setting up custom objects, I don't need anything else to basically set up a platform event. I can just do it with my knowledge of setting up custom objects.
Yes, yes.
Does this mean platform events are custom fields?
Yes, they do. And they have custom fields depending upon your business use case that you can configure.
That's great to know. As a Salesforce developer, I don't need to learn too much to use platform events. That's fantastic. All right, so we have our gesture. We have the platform events, where which the gesture, I believe, will just publish something to Salesforce, and Salesforce can handle it, right?
True, you will see that.
All right, I know some ways of handling that happens in Salesforce, but is there something specific to IoT?
Yes, there is. So let's talk about IoT before moving on to the IoT Explorer. So IoT stands for Internet of Things, but in the fourth industrial revolution, the meaning is really changing. It's not only about your sensors and the data they emit, and not only about turning physical devices into connected devices. It is purely about having the ability to use the data that is being emitted and using it to create connected customer experiences, to give proactive services to your customers who matter the most. So IoT Explorer by Salesforce in the Salesforce IoT platform has three main components to it. One is the customer context. As the name suggests, when a platform event comes into your system, you can actually give it a context. So let's say you've been maintaining your customer data like service agreements, recent cases, purchase history, and tracking them in a few custom objects or standard objects like assets, etc. So when a platform event comes in, you can actually use the platform event to map the event to a particular data point in your Salesforce org. So let's take an example of a refrigerator, right? So let's say I'm a company who manufactures a lot of refrigerators and wants to keep a track of what's happening with the refrigerators after the customers have bought them. So let's say I'm tracking if the refrigerator is in a normal state, or if it's in a high temperature state where I need to have a field service agent go and check in, which is a proactive service opportunity for me. So we can all give the context to the platform event using the customer context. And once it gets the context, you can actually write rules and take rules-based actions in the orchestrations. So IoT orchestrations are a combination of rules, formulae, rules which are written in formulae, simple Salesforce formulae, and then you have actions and transitions which are optional. So let me explain how they work. So once you get the user context handed over to the orchestration, you can take a specific action based on each rule. So let's say if my refrigerator is in a high temperature state and it's been there for some time, and I know that it's going to break down, so I can give a proactive service to my customer without the customer having to wait for the refrigerator to break down and then call me, then raise a service request. So it really makes it simple to visualize the states of your devices and have the connected devices and use their data to give really connected customer experiences.
All right, so there is this context that we have to set up, and then there's this orchestration that we can do.
Yes.
And there are these actions that we can take based on its interactions. So if I have a good knowledge of setting up data mapping, is that enough to set up context?
Yes, it is. So the whole Salesforce IoT platform is low code or no code. It's just all clicks and no code. So it's very easy, and they're very similar to setting up process builder and workflow rules.
And if I'm like either a beginner or intermediate or an expert at setting up process builder processes or workflow rules,
yes.
would I be comfortable in setting up orchestrations?
Yes, surely.
Okay, and I believe it's the same for setting up actions as well. So I can basically update records, send emails, maybe a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, just like workflow updates.
Just like workflow or process builder. Right? It's just that orchestrations are specific to IoT, and I also think there's this extra visualization aspect to this that is not there in probably the process builder or workflow.
Yeah. So the visualization aspect is the traffic view in your orchestrations, which visually represents all your devices in real time. So you can see how many refrigerators are in normal state or how many refrigerators are in a high temperature state, depending upon which you can take different actions.
So I can just basically see what is happening real time.
Yeah. So there are 50 refrigerators which are in normal state, but there are 2 refrigerators that are in high temperature state, and you want to take a look at them. So you would visually know, instead of running code and getting to know the list of all the refrigerators, you can just visually see of how many refrigerators are in each state.
That sounds really useful. Yeah, and I can't wait to see, from what I know, the amazing demo that you have in store for us. Are you going to fire it up, and are you going to use a refrigerator on right now or something like that?
We would assume it to be a refrigerator, but not a real refrigerator now.
So are we using a refrigerator, or are we using something else to be?
So we are using a prototype board, which is called a Raspberry Pi, which has a gesture sensor mounted onto it. And without further ado, let's get started with the demo. So, so as you can see, there are my screen is divided into 2 parts, and on the left hand side, I have my Salesforce org, and on the right hand side, I am streaming the device from my phone's camera. So, before we start with the demo, I'll introduce you to the personas. First persona is the customer, and the second persona is the internal service agent who is logged into his org. So, and the device is a Raspberry Pi, which has the Skywriter hat on top of it. It gives you the possibility to map 16 different gestures to different data points in your Salesforce org. So all that integration we'll talk about in the how it works part of the webinar. But now let's just get started with the demo. So let's start with the customer's persona, and let's say I'm the customer and I have a huge factory with a lot of machinery installed in it. And every time I have to raise a customer service request, I'll have to call a service vendor and then listen to that all IVR music and wait in the line for an hour or two to get my turn, and then give all my details to the service agent, who in turn has to fill a lot of fields and forms and then create a service request. Wouldn't it be amazing, or time saving rather, to just have to be able to create a case from the machine itself? It would save a lot of time and effort too. So let's assume this Raspberry to be on the control panel of one of the machine, and let's assume that it's gesture enabled. So it is as easy as a flick. So watch the camera carefully. So I'll be now doing a gesture, which is a flick, and then a case will automatically be created in the Salesforce org. So let's continue with our demo. So let me just do a flick on the Raspberry board, and now I'm displaying the person of a customer who does a flick, and then I get a case that is created in the Salesforce org. So if you see
success,
that's working. Finally. All right. So if you see a notification in the Salesforce org for the internal service agent who's logged in, he gets a notification that a case has been created. So let's say I'm in the middle of something and the user and the agent wants to take a look at it later. So I close the toast notification, I carry on with my work, and then once I'm done with all my work, I just want to go back and check the latest case that was created. So instead of me going to the org, going to the list view, trying to figure out what case that was created, I can just double tap on the device, and then it will take me to my latest case in my Salesforce org. and voila. So here is the latest case that was created with the gesture. And remember we talked about the customer context in the previous slide. So it is really easy to map which kind of machine that was used to create a case. So this machine is a 1K turbine that we use to create a service request for, and this is all there in Salesforce org. So with this case being created from the device itself or the machine itself, you can actually go back and track what are the previous cases for this particular asset, who's the contact, what's the serial number, and etc. So that is how easy it is to map a gesture to your Salesforce data point. And this particular device gives you a 16 different gesture combinations, which you can map to different data points in your Salesforce org, like list views, record pages, reports, dashboards, wave analytics dashboards, and so on and so forth.
All right, so I see this magical IoT device on the right there.
Yeah.
It's basically very intelligent. It knows it's capturing your swipes, and you don't even have to touch it and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there is stuff happening in Salesforce, including navigation and case creation and a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Right? As a customer, I'm probably impressed, but as a developer, I need to know how you did this right
Sure.
now.
Sure. Certainly, yes. I'm a developer myself, so
Yes.
if I would have seen this demo, I would have been curious enough to know how it's done. So let me just quickly show you how it works.
Before that, let me just make sure all the attendees are on track. In case if you're having any audio or video sync up issues, the best and quickest way is to exit, go to webinar, and rejoin it right away, and that fixes the issue 99% of the times. All right, back to you, Raghavendra. Sorry.
All right, no worries, Shashank. Thank you for that.
Oops.
Oopsie. All right.
Okay.
So let me start off with the device itself. So the device, as I explained earlier, is a Raspberry Pi. Let me just make the screen a bit bigger. So this is a Raspberry Pi with a gesture sensor mounted on it, and it is connected to the Wi-Fi, obviously. And the board runs Python on it. So Raspberry Pi is a tiny, affordable computer that you can use to learn programming with fun and practical projects like DIY projects and etc. And it gained a lot of popularity for it being a possible prototyping platform for IoT projects. So that is one of the reasons that we use Raspberry. And there is an external hat that is mounted on top of the Raspberry Pi, which is called the Skywriter hat, and that is the gesture sensor for us today. That's from the hardware point of it, but let's move on to what's running behind. So this board runs Python on it, and there's a Python program running behind the scenes. So we are using two main libraries, which is a Skywriter hat and a simple Salesforce library, which is a REST API wrapper for the Salesforce REST API.
So to access the Skywriter device that is mounted on Raspberry Pi, we already have a library, and
Yes.
we're using that.
Yes.
And to access Salesforce APIs
Yes.
From Python, we already have a library,
Yes.
simple Salesforce, and we're just using that.
Yeah, for authentication and firing of platform events. So once I import the libraries into my code, I just authenticate to Salesforce. And then I have a listener method for each kind of gesture that runs on the Raspberry Pi. So for a flick, I am actually having a Python function that is running in the background, and I'm constructing the REST API endpoint. But you could also use the Python Salesforce simple Salesforce library to just create it as an S object. So once I have the endpoint constructed, this is the API name of the platform event that I'm using, and I'm passing in a few details like Shashank, you asked me, are there any fields for the platform event?
Yeah.
So these are the fields and their values for the platform event. And once my object is constructed, I'm just sending it out to the Salesforce subject REST API endpoint, and then that creates the platform event in the backend. So that's as simple as using it. And similarly for the double tap, I'm querying the latest case ID and then sending it off to the platform event. So that's how it works on the device side. But now let's see how it works on the Salesforce org, how the Salesforce org is set up. So first off, the platform event itself. I guess you've already seen the difference, or one of the difference between a custom object and a platform event, which is the API name itself. So, the API name of the platform event ends with underscore underscore e, but when it comes to custom objects, you already know it ends with underscore c. Right? So yeah, so that is one of the key starting differences, and then you have a few different data types for platform events, which is date time, text, date, checkbox, and text area long and number. Depending upon your business process or your business use case, you could create multiple fields on the platform event itself, and they don't have relationships in Salesforce like a lookup or a master detail. But coming to one of the key differences, you cannot see the platform events inside of Salesforce. Like you can't see them as a list view, like how you see in the normal custom objects, and you can't report on them. But it's all there in the backend and it's being handled in the backend. And you can always publish and subscribe to platform events using different different features that Salesforce offers. And the platform events are only stored in the Salesforce org for 24 hours and no more than that. But you'll have a field called replay ID, with which you can retrieve a platform event in the retention window using the comedy library. And comedy library, we'll talk about it in a few minutes.
So at least in the creation of platform events, I don't see any code yet.
Not yet.
So we don't need to worry about using code to set up platform events, right?
Yeah. It's no code. It's just point and click.
Okay.
Now let's move on to the IoT Explorer, starting off with the context itself. So I have set up the context here for my gesture event. And on the left-hand side is my platform event that we just saw. And on the right-hand side, I'm mapping the platform event to a particular asset in my org. So I'm sending off a serial number within the key custom field, and that field I'm using it to map it to a particular asset in my org. So here is how the case that was created has the asset looked up in the case, and that's how it got a 1 kilowatt turbine looked up in the case record.
So the platform event is going to send a key as part of one of its custom fields to Salesforce.
Yes.
And in this context, you've basically linked that external device to an equivalent record in Salesforce.
Yes.
So that's the asset.
That's the asset. And it can be any S object or any custom or standard object in your.
It's just through just mentioning the external ID as a key.
So you can have a matching point, which is a custom field on the platform event, and a standard or a custom field on your subject record, and you can just map them. And this is passed on to the orchestrations, which we'll be seeing next.
Right.
So that is all about context. And now let's talk about orchestrations. So in orchestrations, I know the screen is a bit intimidating if you're seeing it for the first time, but let me just go ahead and explain each one of it. So let's start off with the states. So these are the two states in the orchestrations. So I'm using this orchestration to track how my devices are being used. So one of it is being used by the customer to create the case, and one of it is being used by the internal employee to navigate to the latest case. So when a platform event comes in, when I'm in this state, and if it has a destination type called CRUD, meaning create, read, update, or delete, it means I'm getting a platform event from a customer, and I'm actually transitioning off to the customer request state. So when I go back to the customer request state, I'll just go ahead and create a case, which is an action in the IoT orchestration. So once I get this, I create a case, and then I can also have multiple options, either creating, reading, editing, or deleting a particular record in Salesforce. And then after that, once the action is done, it stays in that state. But if I get another platform event which has another kind of endpoint whose destination type is either a subject or list view, that could be a possible request to navigate to a particular case or the latest case, as we have seen in the demo. So if it's that, I am just transitioning it off to the employees navigating to the latest case state. So this is how it works in when you're writing the formula and setting up the actions and transitions. But remember, we also talked about the visual representation of your devices. So this is how it is. So we have two of the states configured, and on the left hand side of the screen there are total instances, which is two, meaning we used one persona, that is the customer trying to create a case, and the other persona who is the internal agent who is trying to navigate to the latest case. So those two are of the instances of the devices, and they're of 50-50%, which are two devices equals. So that is all about orchestrations, and you can have variables, properties, etc. in your orchestrations depending upon the amount of customization that you have.
All right, it looks pretty straightforward. And if you look at that orchestration UI, I think there is this aspect of finding out which record we're talking about through the context.
Yeah.
And then setting up a few rules as conditions, like you see in processes, and then taking some actions based on that. In this case, we are actually creating a case record.
Yeah.
So it's a data manipulation operation. Right?
Yes, it is. It is.
And not just that, you also can visualize the various states of each of the devices based on the platform event information.
Yes.
That looks pretty straightforward and pretty neat for me.
Yeah, it is. So this is all about how we have it in how the case got created and etc. But we also navigated to a latest case using the gesture, and that happened with a custom lightning component. Now is the code that you asked for, Shashank. We are going to look at the code right now. So if you see in my gesture app, lightning app, I have a utility bar component, and we are using utility bar because it's ever present in the lightning experience app. So we have a component which doesn't have a front-end markup, but it has some back-end code that lets us navigate the lightning experience. So let's take a look at how it works.
So if I understand correctly, if it's just actions that are allowed inside IoT Explorer, you can just use that. But if you have maybe some advanced use cases like UI navigation and stuff, you can use custom code. In this case, Lightning components.
Yes.
True. Are there any other ways of basically handling platform events?
There are. So you can publish and subscribe platform events using Apex and Process Builder. So to subscribe to platform events in that way, you can write an after insert trigger on the platform event and have it do your business process as per your use case. If you want to do it the point and click way, you also have the process builder where you can just configure it like any other custom object or a standard object in your org. And the same goes with publishing too. You can use the database save result class to construct the object and save it, that which fires up the platform event. And you can also use the process builder to create a platform event.
And I'm guessing it is that simple when it comes to process builder or Apex, because they are set up very similar to custom objects.
Yes.
So you can just treat them as like custom object records while you are actually publishing or subscribing
to them.
Isn't that like good thoughtful thinking?
It is. And it's a great time saver too.
When you want to basically do some other way of handling, use custom code using a library, I think, that you're going to show now.
Yes, that's what we're going to take a look at. So as this is the component that we have in the utility bar, and as Lightning components are modular, I built another reusable component that subscribes to a particular platform event given the name in an attribute. So this is the component that subscribes to the platform event. The channel takes in the API name of the platform event, and once it gets a platform event message, I'm handling it in this component itself. So let's take a look at how I subscribe to the platform event itself. So I have a few attributes in the component. First off, the channel itself, which is the API name of the platform event, and then session ID, which is my current session ID that I'll be using to subscribe to the platform event. The main part is we are using a CommentD library. A CommentD library is a JavaScript library that we use to subscribe to platform events and streaming events inside of Salesforce. So I have the CommentD library loaded into my static resource, and then once the CommentD library is loaded, I just go to the controller and get the session ID and then pass it off to a helper method. In the helper method, I set up my authorization to the CommentD, and initiate a handshake. Once the handshake is successful, I subscribe to the platform event here. So this is where I subscribe to the platform event and fire off the component event, which gives the platform event message to the component that is actually there in the utility bar. So channel is the API name of the platform event again. So once I get the event message, I'm creating the component event and firing it off. So once I get it back to my component here, based on different parameters like destination type, if it's a list view, I'm using the Lightning component framework's inbuilt component events, which are navigate to list view, navigate to S object, etc. So if it's a list view, I'm navigating it to a list view, giving it a few required parameters, which is the list view ID or the scope. And then if it's an S object, I'm giving it the record ID of the S object itself, and then firing off the event, which takes us to the record detail page. And if it's of type CRUD, this is for the notification that we saw when the case was created. I'm just giving a toast message here with the toast notification content. So that's how it works in the utility bar and the Lightning navigation page. So just to summarize, we used platform events to communicate gestures to the Salesforce org, and then we used the IoT Explorer to map the platform event to a particular object in my org where I have all my CRM data, and then I also used the Lightning components framework and the utility bar to use gestures to navigate the Lightning experience.
All right, so a little bit of understanding that I got from the Lightning component code that we saw is that so Lightning components don't subscribe to platform events straightforwardly, right? So we have to basically behave as if we are an external system, and then talk to publish platform events.
Correct.
And the way I see that, you have to get some authentication, and then you have to basically subscribe to a platform event, and then you can basically publish or subscribe to that, right?
Correct.
Publish or handle the publishing of this platform event.
Yes.
And since that takes a lot of time, there is this library called Comet. Interesting name there. Yeah. So Comet has like everything inbuilt that you can directly use for all these steps.
Yeah.
Making life easy for
JavaScript
developers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Comet. All right. So with that, I think we are pretty much done with what we wanted to talk about and what we wanted to show. Let's also get a quick recap from start to finish for people who might be asking. All right, so we have a Raspberry Pi device that you saw, and we mounted another sensor device on top of it called Skywriter Hat.
Yeah.
And Raspberry device, since it's a computer on itself, we can basically write code in it.
Yeah.
And we did.
We did actually.
And we did. We used Python. Use Python for that because it does not run Apex.
It does not.
Or Lightning components. Maybe in the future. We don't know. Forward-looking statement, safe harbor there. Yeah. So on the top of that, we have Skywriter Hat, and we were accessing the features that Skywriter Hat gives, which is basically listening to things that you do to it, like maybe gestures like tapping and swiping on the top.
Yeah.
You don't even have to touch and stuff. And the library gives you ways of handling this.
Correct.
And what we were doing there was to basically subscribe to a platform, create a platform. Record,
so
right?
We use the simple Salesforce library for Python, which is a wrapper for the Salesforce REST API written in Python. So we use that to create platform event, which is then sent off to Salesforce and handled by the IoT Explorer and Lightning components.
Great. And I think simple Salesforce is available for everybody, and it's open source.
It is open source.
Yeah, you can just use that and interact with the API. And as part of that, since platform events are also available through the REST API, you can basically just publish a platform event. And if you want to go the no-code way using the IoT Explorer, we can basically create records and take other actions as well.
Yeah, you could just use the process builder to do it.
And you also showed us some advanced UI navigation stuff and the toast message and stuff. using Lightning components and the Comet B library inside the Lightning components.
Correct.
I loved this demo. I hope our attendees also enjoyed it. And before we move on to taking some live questions, let me just share with you a few learning resources using this little thing called Trailhead, just in case you heard about it. Have you heard about Trailhead?
I did. That's where I learned about Salesforce IoT.
That's amazing. So we have an amazing trail, engage customers with Salesforce IoT, which gives you an understanding of what is IoT, how IoT works, and how Salesforce and the Salesforce platform and the Salesforce development fits into the world of IoT. And then there is this quick start project for IoT Explorer, specifically if you want to get your hands dirty. With the IoT Explorer, you can try a easy quick start with, I believe there's a virtual device or something that you
There's
can
a virtual
try out
thermostat
with.
that you can use.
So you don't have to actually buy a device.
Buy a device.
Or get a device.
Yeah.
You can just do it online.
Online.
The Trailhead way, right?
Trailhead.
And if you're a little more adventurous and if you want to try out something like what you saw in the demo, right? You can't just recreate the demo, but what you can do is there is a Trailhead project called Build an IoT Integration with Electric Imp, which is pretty much similar to what we did, process-wise, the customization or the implementation wise. It's just that instead of a Raspberry Pi, there is an electric imp device, and instead of factory machinery, which I don't think a regular Salesforce developer would have access to, you can just use a refrigerator at your home,
yeah.
right? So a fun, interesting project that you can try out on yourself. I should definitely take a go at it, right? It does involve working with the electric imp device, so if you are able to get that one, this is for you, basically. Right, and let me tell you that you might also be asked for some feedback after this webinar. Please feel free to let your heart out. Let us know how we can improve the webinars, and we are always listening for feedback. With that, let's move on and take a few questions. Okay, so let me bring up the questions. All right. So we got a lot of questions, great questions. Let's read out a few of them. And there are some questions specifically around whether there will be a recording that will be posted sometime later, or other questions like will the slide deck be shared? The answer is yes. The recording and slide deck will be updated on the same page that you used to register. So feel free to check it out shortly. And you can also basically join our Trailblazer community group where we basically post links to everything that we have. Right, I'm shortly going to share the Trailblazer community link as well that you can join. So before that, let's take some questions.
All right.
Hi, Raghavendra. Is there an advantage of using platform events? We could directly create the cases from Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, so you could really create the cases from Raspberry Pi itself, but we wanted to demo how it works in the real world IoT implementations and how you could actually connect your devices through platform events. Because when it comes with let's take the production level deployments, how it goes in the IoT world, right? You always won't have a Raspberry Pi on your machine. You will have another sensor which is sensing the temperature, let's say, and it is just a sensor, and then you want to communicate the sensor data to Salesforce and let it handle based on different rules. So that's why we used platform events to communicate just the interaction part, and then we did the rest of the CRM configurations on Salesforce.
All right, so we have one more question. Are you going to share this on GitHub? Unfortunately, we'll not be able to share this on this particular demo on GitHub, but the Trailhead project that I showed you, let me just show the link once again. You can just search for the Build an IoT Integration with Electric Imp project, and you should be able to try out from beginning to ending something similar to what we just saw. and it's pretty much what you saw, but in a different context with a different device. That's the only difference. Okay, so we have more questions. Is IoT basically serving customers proactively before they face issues?
Yeah, it is. It is. And as we are in the fourth industrial revolution, it is really important for us to use all the data that our sensors and connected devices emit and use them to create a proactive customer engagement and provide connected customer experiences to our customers.
Okay, next question. Can IoT Explorer work with Arduino microcontroller? What's this Arduino thing?
Similar to Raspberry, Arduino is also a prototyping board
Okay.
or a platform. And IoT Explorer doesn't depend on which prototyping platform or which sensor you're using it to, as far as it's getting the platform events, and then you can just go ahead and configure the platform events. So platform events act as a bridge between your devices to your Salesforce org. So as far as your device is able to fire off a platform event and send it to Salesforce, you can use any prototyping platform or sensors.
All right. So can it be used to record in Salesforce who is in office and who is out of office, maybe by flicking swipe on the device? Is this a possibility?
It is. It is. The applications are endless, so you can configure it to any use case that you have, and that seems like a pet project that someone is trying to take a look at. So all the best.
All the best for whoever is interested. You have our support for that. Okay, so for each device, do we need to have a gesture device, or is it like one device can track different instruments?
If your question is for the demo, we only use the single device and we use the Raspberry Pi as a prototyping platform. But it really depends on it, and it really differs from use case to use case. If you're doing something regarding temperatures and humidity control, like a weather monitoring system, you don't actually need different devices, or you would need them based on where you want to put them. So differs from use case to use case.
All right, so there's one question on a little bit of clarity on people wanting to know where the gesture device resides in real time and who does a gesture as input. And just to clarify, for the simplicity of the demo, we used one device only, but they are actually two different devices that we have to imagine. Unfortunately, there's one on the customer side and that the customer uses to interact with their service agents, and there's one that the service agent is basically using for his own need. All right, so I hope everybody is able to hear us. I think there was some audio cut off. So just to clarify, just explaining the demo conditions right here again. We used one device instead of two for the simplicity of the demo. One device resides in a factory, which is being used by a customer on one of its machinery. The other device for the other person, which is the service agent, it will basically reside probably on his desk or maybe in his pocket or something like that. It could be anything, right? Or it could just be an extension of his laptop as well, which probably through USB connection or something like that. It can be many ways, but one thing to note is that for the sake of the demo, we used one device instead of two. Okay, so let's. I think we have some more time for a few more questions. How and where is the Skylighter library available? Do we import it in our Python programs?
Yeah, so Skylighter library is written in Python and it's available on GitHub. So you can just install it in your machine and then use it in your Python programs.
All right. So how does IoT work in Salesforce offline mode? So the way it works is IoT can only send information to Salesforce. Any IoT device can send information to the Salesforce platform or publish, or Salesforce can handle it only when Salesforce is online. And when it's offline, since this is like the Internet of Things, there is no connection and we have to wait until Salesforce gets offline. And in case you're wondering, what if we miss the platform event, right? While it actually happened. So there is a replay mechanism that is in place that is available for, I would say, how many days?
24 hours.
24 hours. Within the 24 hours, you can basically write some custom code to basically check when you go online, was there any platform events using the API mechanism, and then handle that. So that is also available. Okay, so instead of Raspberry Pi, can we use our existing mobile device or any of that sort for gesture reception?
Yes, you could. You could actually write gesture recognition methods on your mobile apps, and then have it fire off platform events or do stuff based on your use case.
Do you know about which model of Raspberry Pi has been used for the demo?
It is Raspberry 2B Plus, which is being used for the demo.
Raspberry 2B Plus. So that's the answer for you there. Can platform events be used with Apex like triggers? Yes, platform events can be handled by Apex triggers, just like Apex triggers can be written on custom objects. They can be written on platform events as well. Yeah. Do we have any restrictions on the devices that we can use for establishing platform events? And also, please be on. We also just spoke about offline functionality. Are there any specific restrictions that we use for establishing platform events?
There are no device-specific restrictions as such. As long as your device is able to send off or fire off platform event, you can use any device for your business use case.
There is one interesting question here. If it's gesture-based IoT connectivity, would it capture gesture of machine or human? Ideally, for a machine to share its performance, how could a machine share its gesture?
So yeah, let me go back to our demo persona that we had. So the gesture enabled um, interaction was there on the machine's control panel and not the machine. So machine is actually not sharing its gesture. Machine can share its own performance reports, but when a factory worker or anyone who wants to go and check the machine, he would use the control panel to see all its data and stuff. So in that control panel is where the person who is checking it can use gestures and create cases. That was the story of our demo.
Okay, so does platform event count again data storage? All right, so there are some questions about data storage, limits, and stuff. So the best way to find out information regarding that is to go to this page, platform event allocations. You can just do this search inside Google and get to this page. All the details regarding the limits and everything is on this page. So you should be able to get all your answers right there. Okay, so let's see if we have any other questions. We're almost out of time. Let's just take one more question. Since we started 5-10 minutes late, we'll take one more question before we wrap up. Let's pick the most interesting one. How are Lightning components linked with events? Do you want to give a quick recap of that?
Yeah, sure. So in Lightning components, we used a JavaScript library called Comedy to subscribe to a particular platform event. And once we have the platform event message, you could do anything that you would want with the platform event message. So whatever platform event that is fired off and subscribed in your Lightning component, you can capture that platform event message and then do something more with that platform event message. So the answer is we use a library called Comedy, which is a JavaScript library to subscribe to a platform event.
So there are questions around is this how even external applications basically publish or subscribe to platform events?
Yes.
It is the same way. So we use the same way for Lightning components as well,
yes.
Since there is no inbuilt mechanism in Lightning components to handle IoT.
Yeah. To handle platform events.
Platform events specifically. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. All right. So that was that. We had some fantastic questions. Thank you so much. There are more questions as well. We'll see if we can post a Q&A on our on-demand document with the other questions also answered as much as possible. And thank you so much for attending today. I hope you enjoyed the content and the demo. And thank you so much, Raghavendra,
No problem. My pleasure.
for doing this for us and for our developer community. And just in case you're wondering, how can I stay in touch with the webinars that we are having for the India and Asia Pacific time zones? Or how can I be a presenter myself? Right? All you have to do is just join the Trailblazer community group. You have all the information regarding that. And you can just send me a quick email with what your interested topic is, and we can take the conversation from there. You can find my email address also within the group description itself. So with that, thank you so much, everybody. I hope we were able to help you understand how things work together in IoT. And until next time, see you again.
See you again.
See you again.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Shashank,
you,
for
everyone.
having me here.